start with our motivation. So I was thinking how when we go to sleep at night, in the same way as when we die, there we kind of have the opportunity to, quote, quote, reset the state of our mind, because we go into a state of subtle consciousness, and all the chatter, all the preconceptions, all the emotions stop. And then when we wake up in the morning, we can start afresh and generate our motivation of compassion and bodhicitta afresh. And in the same way as we go from one life to the next, when we get born in the next life, again, generate compassion and bodhicitta and take that as our approach to life. And in that way, we don't carry with us all the burden of the things that have happened to us, or the things that we have done, and all of our emotions and thoughts about them, all that flood of thoughts and emotions and suppositions. Because we go into that subtle state of mind, like when we fall asleep, that subtle state of mind can't support all that mental chatter. So there's really an opportunity when we wake up in the next day, also when we wake up in the next life, to really generate our motivation anew. And I was thinking, it would be good if we could do that during the day too. Yeah, so whenever something happened, if our mind went out of whack, we could just center it again, leave aside all the hustle and bustle thoughts, and then generate bodhicitta and re-engage with the world. So I think that's what we have to try and do. Even though we can't take little naps during the day to get in touch with that subtle mind. But to at least try to keep ourselves centered and come home to the motivation that really lights our heart up and makes us enthusiastic and hopeful and active. So with that kind of thought, we also want to approach listening to the teachings this evening. That moment when we wake up is quite important, because if we're not careful, then we think, oh, what happened yesterday? And then blah, 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 blah comes back. Yeah? Whereas if we just wake up and in that kind of clear mind generate our motivation right away and stay with that. Yeah? Not carry our backpack full of heavy bricks with us. So I found there's a letter online that I saw. It was from the Washington Post, and I thought I would read it to you. because it's, it was written, I guess this guy is one of the opinion writers for the Post. And this is kind of how he set his mind. And it really shows how we influence each other. And after I read it, I'll talk about how it relates to us. So it's addressed to Alfonso Calderon, who is one of the teens that went to Tallahassee to talk to Rick Perry, the governor, and the state. Yeah, he's the governor. Scott Perry? No. Scott. No, Scott Walker's Wisconsin. Anyway, the governor of Florida. Yeah, maybe it's Scott Perry. So anyway, so he was one of the teens who went there and spoke. And, I've just personally been quite inspired by these kids and what they're doing and how heartfelt they are and how determined they are. So this opinion writer wrote him a letter, to Alfonso Calderon. And he said, on November 8th, 2016, the world as I knew it was turned upside down. You remember what happened then? Everything I was taught about American politics was proved wrong. Everything I thought I knew, hoped was true about the American people, turned out to be a lie. The election of President Trump meant all those high-minded lectures on morality turned out to be generations-long exercise in hypocrisy. All that concern that the president uphold and honor and dignity of the Oval Office was bunk. All that reverence for the presidency and its customs and traditions was fake. All those decades as leader of the free world, as a bulwark against tyranny in general and Russia in particular, were abandoned. The country that swelled me with pride by twice electing Barack Obama its 44th president, the first African American entrusted with the White House, broke my heart by handing over the keys to a thin-skinned, twice-married adulterer, unfit for the office he holds and incapable of discharging the awesome duties that go with it. Every day since January 20th, 2017, we have endured a demoralizing deluge of drama and dysfunction from an incompetent president who was an affront to our nation's history and the men who preceded him. So I'm reading this because I think a lot of people feel this way. I mean, we get a lot of emails and stuff from people. To make matters worse, he one-upped the cynical tradition of presidents picking at the edges of our unhealed racial wounds by becoming a white supremacist bullhorn, barking nonsense about both sides and insults about shithole countries. That members of his presidential campaign are under criminal investigation is the cherry on top of the Minnie's chocolate pie that is the Trump administration. The horror you and your classmates experienced on Valentine's Day only added to my dark mood. Here we go again, I thought. The airwaves will be flooded with images of another devastated community, followed by anguished calls of do something that then segue into inaction and silence. After all, if not even the slaughter of grade school innocents at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newton, Connecticut, can move this nation to act, nothing can or will. But then you spoke. I'm going to try not to cry. Wear the tissues just in case. Within hours of the shooting, you and your fellow Marjorie Stoneman Douglas high school students were roaring with indignation. Within days, you descended upon Florida's capital bearing thunder. And it was there that you, Alfonso, said the words that gave me hope. And here's what he said, and I can't do it justice reading it. What we need is action, and we need it now more than ever, because people are losing their lives, and it is still not being taken seriously. I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know what it's going to take to get some people to realize this is more than just re-election. This is more than just political gain. This is more than the conspiracy theories and people trying to disqualify us for even having an opinion. This matters to me more than anything else in my entire life. And I want everybody to know, I'm prepared to drop out of school. I'm prepared to not worry about anything else besides this, because change might not come today. It might not come tomorrow. It might not even come March 20th, 4th, when we march for our lives down in Washington. But it's going to happen, and it's going to happen before my lifetime, because I will fight every single day. So now back to the author. Alfonso, your generation is one of instant gratification. Any question you have can be answered in seconds by the phone in your pocket. That you know your fight will not be won right now, overnight, or tomorrow, but will require dedication, persistence, and a long view is what brought tears to my eyes when I heard you speak, and as I type these words now. Despite the well-earned cynicism and skepticism of my generation and fellow political observers, that what you're doing will actually succeed, you and your fellow students and those who follow your lead around the country are my hope. You stand on the tiny shoulders of giants, just as the Birmingham Children's Crusade changed the trajectory of the civil rights movement 55 years ago this April. You are doing the same thing for the gun debate today. And then here's the text of a tweet that Barack Obama sent on Thursday, yesterday. Young people have helped lead our great movements. How inspiring it is, again, in so many, to see it again in so many smart, fearless students standing up for their right to be safe, marching and organizing to remake the world as it should be. Former President Barack Obama tweeted on Thursday, "We've been waiting for you, and we've got your backs." All of you make me proud. All of you are the America I thought I lost on election night 2016. Thank God you're here. With admiration and gratitude, Jonathan Capehart from the Washington Post. So, the reason I read that, is, well, you can see how you feel now, after hearing that. But how much we influence each other. And when we have a very discouraged, negative, bitter attitude, then that's how we influence everybody we come in contact with. That's our vibe, as we put it, and it radiates through the environment we're in. And that's why now, Venerable Wu Yin talks so much about serving society. And I think one of the ways we, in the Abbey, serve society is through our attitude and our outlook on life that comes across in the teachings and comes across in the BBCs. And that a lot of people look to us for, that attitude, which just as what Alfonso said inspires us, then how if we practice well, what we say can inspire other people. Yeah? And so when you think about how important motivation and attitude is, because it's the foundation of everything we do. It's not the act, it's the attitude, the motivation that's so crucial. That, if we work hard in our practice, then just how we are in our lives influences the people around us and all the people we connect with online. And and that's our duty. Yeah, we don't have time for bad attitudes and bad moods and complaining minds. There's too much suffering in this world to, spin around our own little tragedies. So, especially, we know how much people need a hopeful attitude now. So, this is what we've got to do and put forth. And of course, encourage all these young people who are just amazing. Yeah. And Venerable Jigme and I occasionally, because our birthdays aren't too far apart, we get together and we pat each other on the back and say, our generation stopped the war. Yeah, and it's true. We stopped the Vietnam War. It wasn't only us. Yeah, there were a lot of factors going in hand, but it was the fact that so many people spoke out and went on the streets peacefully. Yeah, you were there too. Yeah, were you there, Tanya? Are you old enough? Then to be there and do that, and to see that when people come together with a good motivation and you stick to it, you don't give up. After one demonstration, if you just back then threw in your hands and, then the war never would have stopped. Yeah. So it's the fact of just sticking with something again and again in a peaceful way, but persistent. And so that's got to be in our practice, how we stick with our practice. Yeah, to work with our minds and how we, are in the world with each other, and how we engage with the rest of the world beyond the Abbey. Mm-hmm. So that's what we got to do, and that's our way to contribute. So we stopped the war before. Yeah, so we got to stop the guns this time. And just, I look at those kids and I'm just so proud of them, because it just reminds me very much of our generation. We were young. And what is wrong with being young and idealistic? Why are all these people in the Florida legislature just poo-pooing these kids? What is wrong with being young and idealistic? Go for it. The world needs that kind of energy.
The counter question to that would be, why are they old and cynical?
Why are they old and cynical? Because they didn't do that reset of purifying things at the end of the day, setting them down, and then beginning anew each morning with compassion. They didn't do that. They carried with them everything. And it just stockpiled gunk that you carry around, and it makes you cynical. And it makes you feel hopeless. And it's all just the attitude. But that's why I had it the motivation, why each morning we've got to reset our motivation. and not just carry around, whatever happened or whatever we think happened, Whatever happened actually doesn't matter. Have you ever thought about it? Whatever happened doesn't matter at all. What matters is what we think happened. What matters is how we're relating to what we think happened. Yeah, because whatever affliction is arising at that moment because of what we think happened, whether it happened or not, is the crucial thing we have to deal with. Yeah, because lots of times, we're an afflicted thing. Somebody tells us what happened. It doesn't change our mind at all. We are stuck in our negativity and we just go on and on anyway. Okay, so that resetting all the time is very important, and living with an attitude and a very firm decision of I do not want to carry the stuff around me, or what I think happened in the past around me and all my emotions and gobbledygook afflictions. I do not want to carry that around with me. Yeah. Because otherwise, I'm not living my life. I'm living totally in reaction to what I think happened in the past. So it's all just in my head. It's all just make-believe. Yeah, the horror story that we author ourselves. Yeah, so that's why the thing of coming back to our motivation again and again is so important. Yeah. Because otherwise, like this happened to me when I was a kid, this happened to me yesterday, this happened, then, we're not free. Our mind's totally trapped. And then if we start considering what happened previous lives, oh my goodness, then we can't even move. Yeah? And yet, none of that is happening now. And it really doesn't matter what happened. It matters how we are relating to the world now. And if we let all that old stuff just, be a filter through which we see the world.
It seems like resetting our motivation is a way to break the karmic chain.
Yeah.
And to take control over our minds and our lives and how our karma unfolds.
Yep.
So it's like freedom.
Yep. Yep. That's why it's so important. Yeah. Otherwise, who wants to just grow old and be a bitter old person? A bitter and a cynical old person. Ugh. Yeah, that's pretty miserable. Yeah?
I want to say what's very beautiful about the letter you read too was that it's, in my mind, sets up a lineage of, the encouragement coming from activists of the past and Barack Obama, who has been a community organizer much of his life, coming out to say, we got your back.
Yeah.
So it's very hopeful, that kind of intergenerational activism.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to help young people.
Right.
You have to have good mentors, people who help you see what you need to stick it through.
Yeah.
So that gives me a lot of joy.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I think Obama really gave to the country, was that sense of, of hope and resetting things. So we just talked a lot about being out there in the world, but we also have to be in here and have a peaceful mind. So that's why we're studying about how to generate serenity. Okay, these things are not contradictory. We need both of them. Okay, so we're on the outline that says, on the basis of serenity, explaining how to travel the spiritual path in general. Okay, furthermore, both Buddhists and non-Buddhists and all yogis of the three Buddhist vehicles must first rely on this, meaning serenity, to achieve the different kinds of insight. And so here's a list of the kinds of insight. Those with the aspects of coarseness and calmness, those that reject manifest afflictions and their seeds, those of the 18 constituents, those that discern characteristics, and those having the aspects of the truths, and so forth. Usually they just talk about the first one and the last one. So I don't know what those three in the middle are, or the and so forth. But the first one, those with the aspect of coarseness and calmness, is once you've attained serenity, then if you want to go into higher and higher levels or deeper and deeper levels of concentration, then the way to do it is you meditate on the coarseness of the state of concentration you're presently in, and the calmness or the subtlety of the state that the next state up that you want to go into. So that's a kind of insight meditation, because you're examining, how is that my present state of concentration coarse? How is the next up stage more peaceful? Okay, and so this is a way of meditating, an insight meditation that's done by Buddhists and non-Buddhists alike, and it's for the purpose of advancing in the concentrations in the form realm and formless realm. It does not lead to liberation. Okay, but many people want to actualize those states of concentration because they are apparently so wonderful to experience. Then the other one that how they usually talk about insight is the last one here, those having the aspects of the truth. And so the truths, they're referred to the four truths of the Aryas. And so meditating in such a way, using insight to understand the four truths. Okay, so that's another way of meditating on insight. Consequently, as explained earlier, serenity is called the preparation allowing all. Buddhists also practice insight with the aspect of calmness and coarseness, but it is not required. So Buddhists don't have to necessarily go through all the stages of the form and formless realm concentrations. It's enough, actually, they say, just to have access concentration and use that to realize emptiness. If you're practicing the Bodhisattva path, then you need to actualize all these different levels of concentration. Non-Buddhists do not have insight into the truths. Yeah, they aren't interested in it. Yeah, they don't have renunciation. Practitioners of highest yoga achieve serenity at the generation stage phase, but not for the purpose of achieving insight with the aspects of calmness and coarseness. So if you're meditating in highest yoga tantra, there you achieve serenity on the generation stage, but you're not attaining that because you want to then go up the ladder in the different kinds of concentration in formless and form and formless realms. Okay, what you want to do as a practitioner of highest yoga tantra is then use the concentration to start dissolving all the winds into the central channel. And the next outline, explaining in particular how to travel the mundane path. Okay, so that's the one of coarseness and calmness. Okay, so the phase from the 9th state of sustained attention, remember, which is not serenity, because you still need physical and mental and physical pliancy and the bliss of physical and mental pliancy. Okay, so the phase from the 9th stage of sustained attention up to, but not including, access is called beginner at attention. I think from the attainment of access up to and including, here it says discernment of characteristics. Now what there is from access, before you get to the first jhana, there's these 7 mental contemplations that you go through. Yeah, and each of them normally, if you're meditating on coarseness, okay. If you're meditating on coarseness and calmness, it's, how you're gaining more and more understanding of the coarseness of your present state and the calmness of the next one. Okay, so from the state of attainment of access, which is that first mental contemplation, up to and including discerning characteristics, which is the second mental contemplation, which is called mental contemplation of individual knowledge of the character or characteristics. So that is called beginner at purification of afflictions. So it's just saying that it's the first mental contemplation. This is explained in the listener's level. That's text by Asanga. Thus, the initial preparatory phase and discernment of characteristics are not concomitant, so they don't happen simultaneously with the same object and so on. So he's just trying to, he says if the two were posited as concomitant, then there would be serenity without prior stabilizing meditation, and serenity would occur prior to the preparatory phase. The certain explanation of the gateway to serenity, the nature of the perfection of concentration, is complete. So apparently some people had some wrong ideas about the sequence there, and he was correcting them. Okay, so we're done with the perfection of meditative stabilization. Got that down, right? Okay, and now the next outline is how to train in insight. And so the first topic there is, I'm not going to read all the outlines, but the first topic is a general presentation of how to rely on the requisites for insight. Okay, so once you have studied the authoritative works of Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, their commentaries and the commentaries of these, establish the excellent view within you with the intelligence that distinguishes definitive meaning from provisional meaning. This is the vital requisite for insight. Consequently, take as a base the works of Buddhapalita and Chandrakirti and relate the deep and particular contents of all other treatises on the profound to those texts of Buddhapalita and Chandrakirti. Okay, so what he's saying is, before you start meditating to develop insight into emptiness, you have to have the correct view. You can't just sit down and say, okay, I'm meditating on emptiness, when you have no idea what in the world emptiness is and how to meditate on it, okay? And so we need to really understand the correct view of the nature of reality. And so they often talk about definitive sutras or definitive texts, and then interpretable or provisional texts. Yeah, and the different tenet systems have different ways of saying what's provisional or what requires interpretation, and what is definitive, which doesn't require interpretation and talks explicitly about the nature of reality. Okay, so the different tenet systems, they all have their own ideas about these things, but we really need to follow, the teachers that teach it the correct way. Okay, so he's saying, follow the texts of Buddha Pulita and Chandakirti, and of course Nagarjuna and Aryadeva. Okay, so we're actually very fortunate. Their texts still exist in the world. Some of them are have been translated into English. Some are in the process of being translated. So we're quite fortunate. And also, J. Tsongkhapa wrote commentaries on the major texts, or sometimes if he didn't, then his two main disciples, Gyaltsab-je and Kedrub-je, wrote commentaries on these texts. And so a lot of that is, they exist in Tibetan, they're in the process of getting translated into English. So we're quite fortunate in that way. Yeah. Why? Because I don't know about you, but my wisdom probably is not so sharp that if I, just heard any old teaching that I would be able to discern whether it was the correct view or not. Yeah. Geshe Sonam Rinchen used to, when he was teaching us emptiness, and when we would be going through all these debates of the Samkhyas and the Vaisheshikas and all these people, and we're saying, Geshe-la, why do we have to refute these people? The things they believe just don't make any sense. And he said, if one of those teachers came here and taught you, you would think they made a lot of sense and you would follow them. Yeah? In other words, don't be so arrogant and think that you can discern what's correct and what's not correct. You have to really follow the wise ones. Okay. What's very interesting is that Chandakirti, who is so revered in the Tibetan system, was virtually unknown and ignored during his lifetime. Yeah, people didn't pay much attention to him at all. They thought he was totally nihilistic because they were much more into Dharmakirti at that time. And so here's this guy coming along, challenging all this stuff. And, Chandakirti, he's just a nihilist, just forget it. And so it wasn't until Buddhism, right before Buddhism came to Tibet, like maybe, 10th, 11th century, that then people started taking a renewed interest in Chandakirti and Nagarjuna and these kinds of people. And then, of course, once Buddhism went to Tibet, it really took off. Although it's really interesting, because at the time of Atisha, Chandakirti's texts were not translated into Tibetan. So Atisha was basically teaching, probably Baba Viveka's view. And at that time, not many people even discriminated the difference between Baba Viveka and Buddha Pulita. So, so I find that interesting. But Atisha recommended people to rely on Chandakirti, and Buddha Pulita, Nagarjuna, and so on. Okay, then the next outline is identifying afflictive ignorance. Okay, this is our old friend, afflictive ignorance. Since beginningless time, the object of negation has been a phenomena that is not established by conception. It isn't established by direct perceivers either, because the object of negation does not exist at all. Yeah. So it's interesting that we're spending a lot of time negating what doesn't exist. Yeah, because our confused mind thinks that what doesn't exist does exist. And that's our problem. Okay, we're very convinced. So it's kind of like, a little kid who just grew up believing in the boogeyman, and you try and tell him there's no boogeyman, and he says, no, there is a boogeyman, Okay. We already went through the fact that they don't have the boogeyman in Singapore. I'm sure America could exploit him. Okay. The mode of apprehending true existence is apprehending or grasping it as established unto itself by way of its own nature. Okay, so what is true existence? It's a way of existing that appears where something exists completely unto itself by way of its own nature, from its own side, under its own power, self-enclosed, not depending on anything else, with some kind of inherent nature that makes it what it is. Okay? So that doesn't exist, but that's what what not only appears to our senses, but what our mental consciousness actively grasps as existing. Okay, so it says the conceived object is said to be the truly existent self or nature. Its bases are persons and phenomena, and in relation to them, refutation of the two conceived objects are the two kinds of selflessness. The two thoughts conceiving the existence of these objects in relation to the two bases are the two kinds of grasping at self. Okay, so what that all means is we have the bases, okay? The self, well, the person, and then phenomena. And usually, generally speaking, a person is included in the category of phenomena, but in this way of dividing phenomena, it's not. So there's persons, and then there's phenomena, which means everything else but persons. And that can refer to our environment, but it really refers principally to our aggregates, our body and mind. Okay? So those are the bases. Yeah. On the basis of that, yeah, our ignorant mind looks at those things, and those things appear to us to be truly existent, and our ignorant mind assents to that appearance and says, yes, they are truly existent. So the conceived object of the true grasping is that truly existent person and truly existent phenomena, yeah, that we think are actually there. And what believes them to be there is the self-grasping of persons and the self-grasping of phenomena. Okay, so we have two bases, which are just the conventional objects, nothing wrong with them. The two objects that are misapprehended on those bases, and then the two kinds of self-grasping that apprehend those wrong objects. Okay? So what it's like, yeah, is, I like this example of, okay, when you're born with sunglasses on. So everything you see looks dark. Yeah. But the things you're looking at aren't actually dark. Yeah, that snow is not kind of tinted green or tinted brown, depending on the shade of your shades. Okay, the snow is, or the trees are just, snow's white, trees are green. That's it. But we see something that is, the wrong color, yeah? We see a brown tree, we see brown snow, okay? And then our mind goes, yeah, that's what color the snow is, that's what color the trees are, And we never question it because we were born with those sunglasses. So the bases are the tree and the snow. The conceived objects are the brown or blue or whatever color, you're seeing them as, trees and snow. And then the grasping at inherent existence is like the mind that says, yeah, they are those colors. Okay? So it's kind of like that. So the conceived object of the self-grasping ignorance does not exist, but the basis that was misapprehended does exist. It's a conventional object. Okay? So when we talk about self-grasping or selflessness or self of person, self of phenomena, yeah, the word self can have two different meanings. So sometimes self is synonymous with person. But when we say selflessness of person, selflessness of phenomena, the self of person, self of phenomena, those things, their self actually means inherent existence or true existence. Okay, so don't get confused thinking self-grasping just grasps at the person. Yeah, because there's self-grasping of persons and self-grasping of phenomena. And there's also selflessness of persons and selflessness of phenomena. And the selflessness is the absence of that true existence, the absence of that self, and self meant true existence in those circumstances. Okay? Yeah. So this is important to understand, otherwise you get really confused, because you have one word that means two opposite things, and one exists and the other doesn't, and Okay? Okay, I think that's good enough. Everybody get that? Yeah, okay. Then, okay. Although some Madhyamikas and Chittamadrans maintain that the focal object of the self-grasping of persons is the mere I, and actually, yeah, all the Madhyamikas say that. So focal object, that means the observed object. That's just the thing the conventionally existent thing that our mind is looking at and seeing incorrectly. Okay? So these Madhyamikas and Chittamadrans maintain that the focal object of the self-grasping of persons is the mere I. When asked for an illustration of that mere I, some say that it is the mind basis of all, others that it is the mental consciousness, and so on. According to the present Prasangika system, the mere I, that is the object giving rise to the mere thought, I am, is asserted to be the focal object. The aggregates are not considered to be illustrations of it, even for a second. This is a special trait of this system. Okay, so here's talk of the mere I. Yeah, what's the mere I? So the mere I is the I that exists. It's the conventionally existent I. Okay. However, when you try and point your finger at what that I is, you can't point your finger at anything. It's something that exists merely by conception and a designated term. Okay? So that's the way things actually exist. They exist merely by being designated with a term on the basis of its parts or its basis of designation. So when we say I, that's that mere I. When we analyze to try and pinpoint exactly what that I is, we come up with absolutely nothing. Yeah, we search for it here, we search for it there, we can't find it. It's not one of the aggregates, it's not something separate from the aggregates. We look everywhere, can't find it. And yet, when we don't analyze, it exists. Okay, so that's hard to understand because our senses, when we look at things, they appear like they have some mode of existence from their own side. They don't appear to us to be merely designated by term and concept. They appear to have some substantial reality there. Yeah? Because we think if they were merely designated by term and concept, then nothing would be there at all. Yeah? But that's not true either. Yeah, the mere I is there. Yeah, it exists, but you can't find it when you search for it. It drives us crazy. That's good. Okay, so some people, what this paragraph is saying, some people, when you ask them, well, tell me what the mere I is, then they say, oh, there's this storehouse consciousness, a foundation consciousness, we'll call it the mind basis of all, and it's this neutral consciousness, and it carries with it all these latencies, all these karmic seeds, and the latencies are what make appearances happen to us, and the karmic seeds are what make us get reborn and have the experiences we do. So the actual thing that's the real person is this foundation consciousness that stores all these seeds and latencies. That's what the Chitta Madras say, or Yogacharya. Okay. Then some of the Madhyamakas, the Svatantrika Madhyamakas, those people who follow Bhava Viveka, who was actually a great pandit. We shouldn't put him down. But poor guy never really had a chance to fight for himself in the debates. He was always just, slammed. Anyway, so the Svatantrika Madhyamakas say, no. If you want to know what the mere I really is, it's not this foundational consciousness. Yeah, it's the mental consciousness. Yeah, it's just the flow of the mental consciousness. That's the person. Okay, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah, seems like, yeah, that makes sense. I'm not my body, and my sense consciousnesses, I'm not those because those are affiliated with my body. So what's left? Mental consciousness, all my thoughts. Yes, I think, therefore I am. Yeah, all my thoughts, the thinker, that must be me. Okay, and then the Prasangika Madhyamakas say, sorry, you got it all wrong. You're just hallucinating another make-believe self. Yeah, the mental consciousness is not the person. Yeah, because as soon as you point to something and say that is the person, then you're saying that the person and the mental consciousness are exactly the same thing. Okay. And there's some problems saying that. The mental consciousness, the one that's thinking, for example, is the same thing as the I. Then you can substitute those two terms mutually. So then when you say, I am walking, it means the mental consciousness is walking. Does your mental consciousness walk? Hello? Yeah? No, I don't think any of our mental consciousness walks. Okay? So there's some difficulty saying that when you search for what is the mere I, you can point to something and say that's it. Because then those two things, they would have to be exactly the same. Difficult. Okay, so this position of saying, there's a mere I, but you can't, point to what it is, that is a unique tenet of the Prasangikas. Okay, similarly, the object of the innate thought, this is mine, is solely mine. Okay? So what it means is, when we have the thought mine, we have to be looking at something that's the object of that thought that we say is mine. And we say, it's just solely mine. Okay? Mine is not the aggregates. Maybe I should finish reading here, okay? Yeah. It is said that one's eyes, ears, and so on are not to be considered to be it. So even though conventionally we say, my eyes are mine, my ears are mine, my tongue is mine, okay? Here, when we're talking about the I and mind, that is the basis, for the innate feeling of this is me, and this is mine. We can't point to the eyes and ears and so forth. Yeah, even though conventionally we say they're mine, because the mine, when we talk about I and mine, the mine is a person. It's not the aggregates. Okay? And they have so many debates over what this person is, what mine is. Okay? I can't say I understand it. The Pali tradition does not have a lot of debate about it. I asked Bhikkhu Bodhi, he said it's just, it's just what appears to us as mine, the person that, is my. Yeah. Huh?
Like the owner?
Yeah. But when I wrote, like the owner, Geshe Dadul said, no, you can't put that. The mine is what makes something mine. That's the most I could get him to say. So it's got to be a person, because the view of the personal identity grasps at an inherently existent I and mine. So mine has to be a person. He says it's what makes things mine. Right.
Is the owner and a person different? The owner and the person?
Well, he said you can't say it's the owner. I guess, they must have some...
The owner would be separate. The owner is external to the thing.
Yeah, but the owner is a person. Okay, but anyway, he said you can't say it's the owner. But but you see, there's a big debate. I mean, it's a thing that among the, Drepung Ganden and Sarah, they don't all agree on what mind means. That's what the debate is. So it's not even between the Gilus and the Nyingmas and these people. It's not even between the Tibetans and the Chinese and the Pali tradition. It's just, the Galupas are just, we got to analyze this to death and find out. And so they each have their own ideas.
So ask Jimpa, since he's from Sarah.
What?
Since Gishi Daldal's from Drepung, right?
Yeah.
So he's giving you the Drepung party line. So ask Tuptun Jimpa, he'll give you the Sarah party line.
Jimpa isn't from Sarah.
Where is he from?
He's from Ganden. He's from Shartse.
Oh, that's right. He's from Ghana.
Yeah.
All right. Well, at least it would be a different college.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. I almost put all that whole discussion as a footnote in the book, and then I just decided, forget it. It's like, I don't have this clear enough to put this whole thing in about how they see it, Yeah. I think part of the problem is when they say mine, they say, oh, we think of the eyes and ears and so forth. So they start from seeing it as mine. What in conventional language, mine refers to, your arms and legs and eyes and ears. But that's not the meaning of mine. And so then they take it from there. Okay, go look it up. Don't ask me, I'm innocent. Okay. So, if something is the focal object of the innate view of personal identity, it must spontaneously give rise to the thought, I or mine. Okay, so the innate view of the personal identity is a mind that is a self-grasping mind that grasps at the true existence of our own I and mine. Okay, so before, when we had the two categories, the self of persons and the self of phenomena, and phenomena is everything that's not a person. When we say self of person, it means all the persons, you and me and Donnie and everybody, okay? Within that, then you have your own I, your one treasured thing that you love to death. And that, the grasping that holds that one as truly existent, is called the view of the personal identity. Okay? So what I'm getting at is the view of the personal identity is the self of persons is the big circle, and the view of the personal identity is a small circle inside of it. Okay? Okay. And so to be the focal object, whatever the object is, that's going to give rise to the thought I, yeah. So you have the base, and then you have the thought I, and then you have another mind that looks at that mere I and grasps it as inherently existent. And that mind is the view of the transitory, the view of the personal identity. Okay, so on the basis of the aggregates, we impute I. Yeah, but the view of the personal identity, the focal object, is not the aggregates, according to the Prasangika. It's that mere I that is merely designated on, in dependence on the aggregates. That's the focal object, and then the view of the personal identity looks at that and says, that's not just a mere I, that's a truly existent one, and holds on to it. Okay? And that becomes a big problem for us, okay? Because then we have a totally false idea of who we are, and based on this false idea of who we are, then we keep hallucinating, okay? Okay, so it must spontaneously give rise to the thought, I or mine. Hence, Devadatta's perception apprehending Kraktu as inherently existent is not a view of the personal identity, but a case of innate self-grasping of persons. Okay, so if I look at you and grasp you as truly existent, that's not the view of the personal identity for me. That's grasping the self of persons, because I'm grasping you as inherently existent. If I grasp myself as inherently existent, then it would be the view of the personal identity. Okay? The objects of innate self-grasping of phenomena are the form aggregate, eyes, ears, the world as containers, and so on. And the mind also is one of the phenomena that it is in that category. The aspect of both self-grasping of persons and of phenomena is the mode of apprehension as inherently established. So, what does the self-grasping persons do? It grasps persons as inherently established, or truly existent, or existent from their own side. All these things are synonymous for the Prasangika. Okay? If the self-grasping looks at, the computer, it says computer is truly existent, and that becomes the self-grasping of phenomena. Okay? So now, demonstrating that it is the root of cycling in samsara. For that reason, neither of these, those two self-graspings, neither of these is the simple imputation of the self to be permanent, unitary, and independent, or of the perceived and the perceiver as having distinct substance, as imputed by false reasoning, for they do not arise under the influence of faulty tenets. And those born as animals over many eons also have them, these two self-graspings. Hence, they are known as innate self-grasping. The view of the personal identity is the root of samsara, and grasping at the aggregate's true existence is the root of samsara. Okay, so let's get through this. Okay, so when we look at the mere I and grasp it to be truly existent, that is different. That truly existent I doesn't exist at all. But that's different than the thought that thinks that there's an I or a self that is permanent, unitary, and independent. Okay? Because the permanent, unitary, and independent self, that's a much coarser kind of self. It's the Atman that is grasped at by the Hindus, and like the soul that's grasped at by the Christians, or the Muslims, all the theistic religions. Okay? So it's a self, it's an I, that's permanent, so it doesn't change at all. Yeah, from one life to the next, who you are is still who you are. Your soul is still the same. It's the same soul, okay? Same Atman. It's unitary. It's one thing. It doesn't have parts. It's just your soul, yourself, there. No parts. And it's independent because it doesn't rely on causes and conditions. Yeah? So things around it change, the body and mind change, but the soul doesn't remain the same. The soul remains completely the same. And this soul or self, at the time of death, goes out of one body, goes over, and goes kerplunk into another one. But it's permanent. Okay? It doesn't change between this life and the next life. Okay? And according to the Hindus, it carries all the karmic seeds with it. Because, you know, from their viewpoint, you need something that is unchanging to carry the karmic seeds. Because if you had a person that changed from life to life, how could a changing person carry karmic seeds? Yeah, to carry karmic seeds, you need a stable base. So it's got to be permanent. It's got to be unitary. It's got to be independent of causes and conditions. Okay? So that, what they assert, and what most people in the world believe, is actually, we learn that as kids from other people. Because it's actually not something that we grasp at innately. It's something that's been made up by different philosophies and religions. And, you know, you learn something as a kid and you believe it. So even though that's called an acquired self-grasping, it's acquired, you learn it in this life. The one that we're looking at that grasps the I as inherently existent is the innate self-grasping. And it came with us from previous lives. It wasn't created by philosophy. Yeah? It just came with us. No visa, no passport required. Yeah? Didn't get rejected at the border. Yeah? It came right in with us. Yeah?
So to meditate on emptiness, it's important to have the correct view first, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are 4 tenets. So it's like, for example, Vaibhashika. My understanding is that Theravada is one of the 18 schools in Vaibhashika. And how can they become arhats if they have wrong view?
Oh, because there's different... from the Prasangika view, is people... who are practicing in Theravada or Pali tradition, we call it, they become arhats because they actually gain the prasangika view. Okay, so there's the difference between being a fundamental vehicle in terms of tenets and in terms of practice. Okay, so in terms of tenets, they would say the Vaibhasika and Sautantrika are fundamental vehicle tenets. But in terms of practice, you can have people who practice fundamental vehicle who have the prasangika view. And you can have people who practice in the Mahayana who have the view of the Vaibhasikas and the Sautantrikas. Okay, so that's how those people become arhats. Yeah, and there's passages in the Pali Suttas that sound an awful lot like Nargajuna, some of them, you know? So somebody who reads that, who's very sharp, can pick out can get the right view from that. Okay. So, yeah. So what we're trying to negate is not just a permanent unitary and independent self, which is comparatively easy to negate, and not, the perceived and the perceiver as having distinct substances, because that's also something that's imputed by false reasonings, false philosophies, okay? But rather what the innate grasping is holding is something that is innate. It came with us from previous lives. So even animals have it, babies have it, yeah, and it's that innate self-grasping that is the root of samsara. Okay, so the last sentence is quite enticing because the view of the personal identity is the root of samsara. Okay, got that. Then he says, and the grasping at the aggregates, true existence, is the root of samsara. You go, but wait a minute, one's grasping persons and one's grasping the aggregates, and they don't have the same object, so how can they both be the root of samsara? Come on, figure it out, guys. And then what the next paragraph gets into, which we'll do next time, is it saying, actually, although the objects are different, the mode of apprehension, the mode of grasping is the same. So they're both considered the root of samsara. Okay, so we have this root of samsara. It's with us all the time. Yeah, this self-grasping. It's all the time. And we just don't even know it's happening, you know. We're so used to it. And we're so convinced that things exist the way they appear that, you know, there's no thought that this is false. Okay? So, you know, like when you get mad at somebody, yeah, somebody says, we're short on people washing dishes. Yeah, how about if you volunteer? Oh, I was going to go take a nap. Why are you volunteering? I need a break. I was so stressed out in my meditation session. I need a nap after lunch. Why are you doing this and asking me to wash these dumb dishes? Okay. What is the source of that? The grasping at the truly existent I. Yeah, we think there's a real person there who's going to undergo tremendous, unbelievable suffering by washing those dishes. Yeah? And that person has to stick up for their rights and what they want. No, I'm not going to wash those dishes. Ask her. Yeah. Okay. So this is. Are you getting why this self-grasping is a problem? Yeah, we don't have any dishwashers because of it. What we have is a bunch of angry people. Yeah. And all that anger comes from, you know, grasping at that I. And we're grasping at an I that doesn't even exist. Yeah, that truly existent self is totally non-existent. Yeah. The mirror I exists, but the truly existent one that we project on top of the mirror I doesn't have the slightest existence. Yeah. And yet, boy, are we attached to it. Yeah. We love our boogeyman. Okay. So we'll stop here tonight.
So earlier you said the conceived object of self-grasping ignorance does not exist, but the basis that was misapprehended does exist?
Yes.
And the basis is?
The mere I.
The mere I.
This is of the self-grasping of my own I. You know, if it's the self-grasping of the clock, you know, then it's just the clock that exists by being merely designated. That's the focal or observed object. That's the base. And then on top of that, I see inherently existent clock.
So it's interesting that they would say that it does exist, even though it's...
It exists, but it doesn't exist in the way we think it exists. We think it exists inherently. Go back to the example of seeing things with sunglasses, okay? The blue tree you're seeing because of your sunglasses. Is there a blue tree there? No. The blue tree is totally non-existent. Is there a tree there? Yes. Okay, so the mere eye is there. The mere clock is there. But the inherently existent eye, the inherently existent clock, does not exist. But we think it does. We're convinced it does. Yeah, it's our most treasured thing. Yeah, it's what we come home to all the time and protect. Yeah. You know, nothing can happen to that self.